I have my panelists with me, and I could introduce them, but I think I'd like them to do that themselves. Some are familiar faces, and some are, emerging as the people who are going to usher us into a new era. So I'll start here, just very briefly, your name and what you do, to the end before we begin the conversation.
Yes. Viva, comrades, viva.
Viva.
My name is Sefu Sani. I am an activist. So I am a revolutionary artist and an activist.
Great.
Good morning.
Morning.
Aye. Comrades power. Comrades Ria. Yeah. Comrades Akchu. Comrades Ziggy Zaga. Awesome. My name is Casmo Makoure, and I went to the Technical University of Kenya. I studied finance. I'm 26 years old, and I'm a music performer, but the government has called me a treasonous criminal, and I'm currently on the streets demanding for better governance, accountability, and an end to corruption. Asanteni.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Elizabeth Wangoi Wanjeri. I am an advocate. I am also the LSK Coast representative, and I practice in Mombasa. Good to be here with you all.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Irene Otto. I'm a council member, and I represent Nairobi, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
We're glad to have all of you. The council member just said something interesting. He urged us not to tire. And I think it's important because, and maybe I can get reflections from you, there's a sense that people get to a place where they say, how much more can we go? How much more can we sustain? Yet there is an importance in sustaining such a movement. So very quickly getting your reactions, because we are also going to talk about this escalation of police brutality. But starting with you, why can we not afford to tire?
We cannot afford to tire because we have come out to fight for our rights. When the young people on 18th of June went to the streets of Nairobi, they were going out to not only fight about the finance bill, but there were deeper issues that were being addressed. Issues of socio-economic rights of the people. If we look at our Article 45 of the Constitution, socio-economic rights such as the right to health care, the right to good education, the right to a good livelihood, to be able to access education, employment, all these issues that are supposed to be addressed by our government, by our leaders, whom we are the people who we give mandate to these people. We exercise our rights as citizens, either directly or indirectly. So when the people took to the streets, they were exercising their rights directly because the people whom they gave the mandate to do that indirectly have not done that. So we cannot afford to tire because we have not yet reached where we need to go. The Mau Mau fought for our country. They came out to fight against colonial injustices. And this is the reason why we were able to get our independence as Kenya. If the Mau Mau would have tired and said, oh no, it is too bad, we have so many people who have died, we have so many people who have been maimed, today we would not have the country of Kenya that we have. And so we have seen the Mau Mau in different places. We have seen Frelimo in Mozambique, we have seen the ANC in South Africa at that time, who came out to fight for their country. And we relieved ourselves from the shackles of colonialism. But unfortunately, we are still living under the guise of neocolonialism, where there were some black people with black skin who took over power, but they continued with those reigns. So this is the reason why we cannot stop. Us as the Mau Mau of today, the Gen Z of today, the millennials of today, the Kenyans of today, we need to fight until we reach to such a place where we have achieved justice, we have achieved our socio-economic rights, we have a place where people are not dying in Madare because of floods. Young people are not unemployed. We do not have to pay such high taxes. And when we elect our representatives in parliament or in any other capacity, they are able to actually amplify the voice of the people and not just their own voices for their own gain.
Right, so we cannot tire because we cannot go back on gains made. Kasmol, you've been consistently at the forefront of really amplifying this unanimous voice around saying we need change. And like I said, there's this interesting point we find ourselves where people are starting to almost say, well, there's certain things that have been done. Perhaps we should now move to understanding that this is the best that can be done, or this is, this is a solution. Whereas I think a lot of us know it's not. It's in the guise of, but really, it's a massive tone-deaf approach to what people are asking. How can we sustain momentum? How can we sustain the activism to ensure that at the end of the day, the voices are heard, the people are heard? How can we continue to sustain it?
Thank you, Janet. One of the ways I see we can sustain the oomph and the zeal of this movement is in remembering how far we've come. And I say this because, just to bounce off what my sister, Comrade Sefu, has said, if we tire, we despise the blood of Rex. If we tire, we despise the blood of Shujaa Kennedy, a 12-year-old boy who was shot. If we tire, we are sanctioning that children should be tear-gassed in schools. If we tire and if we lose our momentum, we are enabling a corrupt regime. It is ensuring that all of you who are in Queer in pursuit of a better future will never get into a workforce. And if you do, you need to have the surname of a person currently sitting in government. I think the way we can sustain, and personally, what drives me to be part of this movement is the fact that there are people who once left home and will never go back. There are people who left home on the 25th and on the day we occupied Parliament who are going to exercise their democratic right to assembly and will never walk again. I think about these people and ask myself, what is so special about me that I should be tired? What makes me so special that I get the right to be tired? Does the mother of Rex, who has shared one of the most heartbreaking stories I've had, does she get the luxury of being tired? Her son was out to ask for better governance, to ask for a better future. For me, he lay his life down so that I might be able to make it for the Citizens' Assembly. I think it is only wise that I contribute that way. If I get tired, Evans Kiraito, who was shot by the police, because these are not victims of accidental happenings. They were not struck by acts of God. These are victims of police excesses and police brutality. We are living in a country that has a police force that is living in the guise of a police service. If I get tired, does the couple that raised Evans, that is now being detained at Central Police Station, have the luxury to be tired? And I think, while it is exhausting, while we live in a world where you're supposed to be a student and this is not how we envisioned to spend our 20s, certainly not for me, in the gift of community, in knowing that I can look to the side and see my sister fighting, I can look to my side and see my brother fighting, I can look to you and see you reporting the facts as they are without being gagged. Those are some of the things we can do. There is most definitely going to be protest fatigue, as is the norm of any process that we undergo as human beings. But for the sake of the sanctity of their lives, of the comrades we lost, for the sake of the families they left behind, for the sake of the dreams and the brains that were splattered on Parliament Road, we cannot afford to get tired. It is okay to take some rest, but for the sake of the comrades who've gone before us, let us not tire.
Let us not tire. And I think just both what you and Sefu have alluded to is those before us didn't. So why should we? You have, though, very accurately talked about protest fatigue. And I think there's going to need to be conversations that reinvigorate people so that they don't feel like, oh, it's done. Or maybe this is the change we need, because we're starting to see that, and unfortunately, it gets us back to why we started in the first place. Elizabeth, again, from the perspective of legal, the escalation of brutality is something unlike many have seen before. Even just yesterday, people peacefully mourning with the parents and relatives of those who died, and then on video, just like grabbed, arrested. Where does the law come in? And I know it's a complex question, and this is a complex matter. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. But what rights are there to use that kind of excess force? And because people want to continue to agitate for change, what happens now? Because it's, in a sense, it's erasure, it's silencing. So from a legal perspective, what is this that we're seeing playing out? And how can we allow people to know that they should be safe when they go to protest peacefully?
In my view, what was happening, like what happened yesterday, is just a classic case of a government just battering its population into submission. That's just what it is. So you're battered to a point that you cannot resist anymore. That's just it. So it is not legal, but it is just a tactic that they're using to beat us to submission. Now, what my view is, any government that is in place should have a humane face. Now, this has got nothing to do with legal or being it a legal perspective, but it has to be a humane face. Now, if someone, I mean, common sense dictates that if I'm burying, the much you can do is give me at least some time to just finish the ceremony, then you can come and barge in. That is just common human decency. But you see now what the government is doing, it is now engaging in psychological warfare. It is actually wrong. So what we are saying is, why can't the relevant authorities just follow the right procedure? It's not like someone is going to run away if they're already attending a funeral. Let them finish. Just give them the decency of mourning. And then you can continue. But we are also seeing a situation where they're even now going to estates now. They're taking those attacks to people in their own homes. You see? So we're slowly getting to a point where now the population is getting so battered. They don't know where it is safe anymore. You're not safe in the town. You're not safe in your own home. So where do you go now, you see? So it's just instilling that fear. But people need to know that nothing comes easy. And this government, actually what it is doing is actually very wrong. And in terms of protesters, they should actually, if the police were doing their work of actually giving protection to the protesters, just going along and ensuring that the protests are taking place as per the law, then all these things we are seeing are really unnecessary. I don't see why the government has to go into estates. If people are running away, why would they be running away if the proper procedure of a protest is actually being followed? So I think we need a humane face to the engagement that is there between the police, the relevant government authorities, and its own population. That's what I think.
Yeah, thank you for setting that tone and saying it's clearly, completely, it's unlawful, because it's important that that's highlighted. Irene, what happens now? Because the public trust is lost. It's broken. People are now looking at so many enemies arising, right? You know, you had first those who in the beginning forced people to go on the streets, and then those who are taking lives by force. How can you speak to people being able to, I don't know, I know trust again is a strange question to ask, but where can people take that trust that was broken? What can they do to motivate themselves to keep going out there to push for the change that they want?
First, let me go back to what Wanjiri had said. Personally, I think the Utu in Utumishi, kwa wote, is no longer there. And that's why they keep being brutal every time. Because why would you go and beat somebody who was just walking? Personally, I experienced police brutality. I was among the first casualties on the 18th because they hit me with a canister. At the police station, you know, when you're at the police station, you think you're at the safest place, that nobody would actually come and attack you there. And that's where they hit me. And for a moment, I couldn't walk. Like, it was so painful. And I was wondering, now, what am I supposed to do? And they keep throwing their tear gas to people. Imagine we are at the station, and we are advocates. So I thought to myself, if this is something they can do to lawyers, how about other people, the common wananchi, who doesn't even know, has not even read about their rights? Because we are advocates, we know our rights. We can sing them to you, but they act this way with us. So how about other people? That's what I thought about every time I was there until I was taken to the hospital for treatment. Now, in order to gain trust, I think we need to see bodies like IPOA working. That is how to gain public trust, because they're the ones who are charged with the oversight role. They're the ones who are supposed to come after these policemen. Have they started doing that? Based on the report that we saw, I think, a week ago, personally, I feel that is very inadequate. They have not even started doing the work. So how are we going to be able to trust them if they don't even do their mandates? And not to water down the sentiments of the IPOA lady who was here last time. I must have forgotten her name, I'm sorry. But people were not impressed with the kind of answers she was giving that day. It looked as though she was being evasive. She was not answering the questions. We want to know, what are you doing about it? What steps have you started taking about, on these matters that are being reported? You cannot tell me that you cannot find the bullet that shot Rex, and that's why you can't do anything. Who's supposed to find the bullets? Who's supposed to do the, what is it called, when the examination? Is it us? Are we the ones supposed to bring the evidence? That's their job. So once they start doing their job, then the public will automatically give them the trust, yes.
Once they start doing their job.
Yes.
I'll come around for a second and final round of questions. And you know, you've all spoken from your perspective. You're also in different fields, but it's a very shared narrative. And the thing that I've also been trying to ask myself is, what happens next? Where do we go from here? Because I feel like it's just one of those moments in history when you wake up and you don't really know what's going to come tomorrow. But we have a chance here to rewrite history. And I often feel like sometimes Kenyans have been, somebody once said, Kenya is like Africa for beginners. Yeah. And the way they described it is that perhaps there's been so many difficult moments, and it's not devaluing what we've gone through. We have been on the brink of many unfortunate moments, you know, whether it was 2007, whether it was going all the way back to Mau Mau, whether it was COVID, whether it was the floods. There's been so many moments, and yet it's a month in, and people feel like, oh, maybe there's a solution on the periphery. Personally, I find that worrying, but I also get that maybe we've internalized that normalcy of where somebody says you're used to the crumbs you get, right? So we do need to continue the conversation, but how do we move this forward? You can answer from maybe from a personal perspective, from your space and your industry. How do you think we move forward today? Yesterday, there was really violent arrests. The intimidation, as Elizabeth has said, has been, it's escalating in a really dangerous way. It's silencing, and there's a submission that's been enforced. So what happens next?
I want to just give an analogy for those of us who went to school and preschool or lived in any of the neighborhoods. There are some people, whenever we are growing up, that are always bullies. So when you find the narrative of a bully, it is always someone who they will come and look down on you. Maybe they think that they're the prettiest group of people in school, or they're the richest people in school, or they're the brightest people in school. So they always come, and there's this child who is always being bullied. And until that time that this child or this person stands up to any of these people, it never changes. So maybe people go through that cycle of bullying, and you know, those people, it's either you're part of them or you keep avoiding them. And I'm sure for most of us, we've gone through such a situation. So it only takes one person who you're so backed at a corner. You know, at some point when someone backs you at a corner, the only thing you can do is push out. When you reach rock bottom, there is nowhere else to go. So you can go down and go down and go down, but the moment you reach rock bottom, Janet, there is nowhere else to go but up. And I think this is where we are at as Kenyans at the moment. We are at a point where we are so pressed at a wall, so we are fighting back with all that we have. And the only thing we need to do is look at this monster that is harming us. We need to look at it and to address it and to confront it. this is the only way that we are going to win. So I don't think that people really are fatigued. It is just that people are being threatened. People are being someone is submitting you into silence. So, and we are being pushed to a wall, to such a place that now we are going to get to push back. When we look at the situation today and the conversations going on, even political conversations and around the scope, a lot of people are saying, okay, you know what, there's a lot of anarchy now, there's a lot of looting, there's a lot of, businesses that are losing their money. And I just want to say that money is not more important than lives. Money is not more important than justice. We can talk about peace, but we can have peace and hunger. They can coexist at the same time. We can have peace and have exploitation. They will coexist in the same space. We can have peace and we can have injustice. So having peace is not a prelude to having justice. What we are asking for is justice. What we are going out to get is justice. And in the words of one of our forefathers, known as Dedan Kimathi, he says, it is better to die on our feet than to live on our knees. So we cannot keep on living on our knees because we are scared. It is better to die on our feet, fighting and getting this justice that we want, than it is to live on our knees. And also I'll finish, before I finish, with Thomas Sankara, who says that any soldier who does not have an ideology is a potential criminal. So a soldier in this case does not just mean the military people or the police, people who are fighting for their rights and their justice, and all of us who are going out there are soldiers. So we need to have an ideology and see what is this that we really want to change. And really what we want, for example, it's not just Ruto to go. We want Ruto and Rutoism, whereby you're picking people because they're your friends, where we have people who are in cabinet and they are not really qualified, where we have the police using excessive force, which they should not be doing. So we want an overhaul of the system. And when we have this in our mind, then we should be able to get to where we're going. I want to finish with a song, because I said I was an artist, and this song speaks truth to power, and it goes out to all of us for us to be able to be enhanced, to have power, to go out for...
Can you save your song for, I would love, because I want to give you the moment to, so once we finish, before we allow you to leave, just so that we can kind of end with that. Is that okay? Right. Yeah, because I'm looking forward to that, and I think it's... Kazmal, she said something interesting. Sometimes you're backed to a corner, and you have two options. You fall down or you push back. Where can people find the courage, the conviction to push back, yet they feel they're faced with anarchy, with death, with threats, with intimidation? How can we collectively push back, and what happens next?
I'll start with a rather radical statement. There's this word that everybody is afraid of, the word anarchy. I don't know why you're playing safe around that word. Anarchy is a political ideology. And it is the political ideology that the government wants to push us to. And I say this because if you analyze what the word anarchy is, it's just basically anti-Rutoism. Because what the outgoing President Ruto is running is akin to what could be described as, and pardon my largesse, a kakistocratic tumbocracy. In the sense that the only way you can qualify for this government is if you're utterly corrupt, if you're utterly inept and uneducated, and if you have a name that has bedeviled this country for long. So sorry to break it to you, fellow comrades in the Catholic University of East Africa and all other school-going children, that you will never be in government because you're educated and you stand for something. Dimwits, all of you. That is what we are fighting. I need us to be alive to this reality because that informs our now and that will inform our what next. I used to be shy of this question, but Kenya is akin to, I would liken our beloved country to a beautiful woman in a narcissistic and abusive relationship. And asking that woman what next is after she bears her heart out to you and you tell her, wa, sauta do, It is imperative, it is incumbent upon us to, one, figure out how do we take our friend from this situation, because otherwise we run the risk of victim blaming. And a lot of the times, the people who are asked what next are the victims. It has never been to the powerful people, because they know exactly what is now, and they know that up to 100 generations, they will be sorted off the blood of your backs. And they use your blood to sign political deals. That's all that's needed. Kitambo, it used to be signatures. Nowadays, the more lucrative thing in my analysis is the blood of young men. Not even for rituals or anything, because you guys are not that important. I need to remind you, when you're walking around, don't you dare think that you're a human being. You're nothing in this country as a young person. We despise you and we hate you. And that is why when there are police excesses and we go on the streets, we are told, tone down. Between you and a headless chicken, I see no difference. This is how we push back. It is in the remembrance of the cruelty that this regime has meted upon us. When you remember that corruption is akin to genocide, when someone steals money that was meant for vaccines, when someone steals money that's meant for higher education, when someone steals money that's meant for food, it should anger you, because there are millions who will never get to see the light of day. We push back because of the resolve we have while saying, Daima sisi wa Kenya. We will push back because what next looks like this. We will deal circumfoniously with this government. We will root it out. We will ensure that all these corrupt officials face the law. We will ensure that rogue policemen, and it has gotten to a point where we have to be very radical in our communication, in the sense that abnormal behavior during abnormal times is normal behavior. The state is trying to push young men and women to violence because they cannot reason. That is why the only way the state can deal with you is if they criminalize you, because they know they can manipulate criminal law. We push back by remembering the comrades that we have lost. We will push back because we are Kenyans, and as my sister and comrade Masita Rus would say, Kenya ni home.
Thank you for that. Powerful statements there. I know we're really short of time and there's still a song to be sung before we go, but I mean, such amazing sentiments from you both. Maybe as you wind up, Elizabeth, and I'll probably come to you as well, Irene, there is this sense of we need that conviction and resolve. How do we also move forward with heavy education? I think it was Irene who said, we know, like you know your rights, you know the law. So how do we then now move forward by emphasizing a lot on people being equipped with the knowledge on their rights? Because that's always been taken advantage of. That is the one thing that has been a constant. We can start with you. How do we move forward in terms of the civic education, in terms of education on policies, to allow us to use that to exercise our democratic rights? Very briefly.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Yeah. In fact, when you asked what next, I was going to say it's just not as simple as saying it is step 1, 2. Now, I'll give a simple analogy. When you give birth to a baby, do you sit there and say, what next? No, this is a process. Now, you start a process of nurturing the life. And nurturing life has a process. You start when the baby can do nothing. They talk, they walk, they go to school, and finally, they're independent. Now, here we have already birthed a revolution. Now, first and foremost, what people need to ask themselves, I don't think people are tired as such. It is just that the tactics that are being used to infiltrate the movement is what is making people lose interest in it. But I think they're very much into it. But number one is we need to constantly remind ourselves, why did it begin in the first place? Now, when you tell yourselves that, and then you come to answer your question, have you achieved what got you there in the first place? If the answer is no, then definitely you have to continue. And my view is, we are fighting for the soul of this country. We are fighting for our future, and we cannot afford to relent. They want us to relent so that they can continue with these shenanigans they're up to. So we need to remind ourselves, number one, why did we begin? And then number two, we need to do civic education. Now, I'll give you an example. You can see these border people who are being, okay, not all of them. There are people who are infiltrating as borders, other goons. We need to do a massive civic awareness among the population. Show them this is the problem. If you did not stick to these handouts you're being given, this is the better part that you can get when systems are working. Let us fight. I've always said, let us fight for systems that are working for each and everyone. Let the leaders put in place systems that are working, and everyone will be okay. It's not an issue that we all want to be crazily rich, but if you can meet your needs and you can live a decent life, most people would be comfortable with that. So we need to remind ourselves two elements. We need to remind ourselves why we began, and number two, we need massive civic education for the population.
Thank you. Very important. Finally, Irene.
Further to what my sister Wanjari has said, I believe that as LSK, we have been doing this and we continue doing it, creating awareness, educating the masses. We have legal aid clinics. We always host them at different court stations, and we are always urging people to come. And you can ask as many questions as you want. And because of the, of the times that we are in, such avenues go ahead to help people understand how our country runs, what their rights are, what their duties are as citizens, and what they should expect from the government. I actually believe that we are not against taxes. Our problem is how are our taxes being used? That's the biggest problem, because why are you taxing people yet they don't see any benefit? We don't have roads, we don't have hospitals, we don't have proper working schools. Even higher education has become a problem. After Form 4, what next? Are they going to, like they were saying, they give people boda. I'm not looking down on boda riders, but all of us cannot be boda riders. You see, so we need to have systems that work. And we need to have the NGOs and the civil society organizations partner up and hold this. We used to hold the legal awareness clinics. We used to go to the people. Even if you go to a market, you find so many people to educate, so many people to tell about their rights, and people are always willing. But even when they are not, you know, sometimes you go somewhere and they want something, wanakuuliza, umetuletea maziwa, umetuletea mkate. I say sometimes we don't have bread, but we have knowledge. And I urge people to actually show up for these things.
Thank you. Thank you for that emphasis on educating and enhancing the knowledge. Before we allow our song, quick announcement, and this is for those in the room, those who are watching. If you or your loved one has gone missing, been arrested, tortured, detained, injured, or died since the beginning of the protests on the 18th of June 2024, please feel free to record your complaint at room L4. So I believe that's now on site, room L4. There's going to be a service that will allow you to lodge your complaint, talk about who is missing or injured, and be able to be led to the right services that can hopefully get you the justice that you deserve. And I think a lot of those platforms exist as well around these platforms. So continue to look out for a lot of these organizations and platforms that are allowing you to lodge complaints, talk about those who are injured, also psychosocial support for a lot of people. Make sure you look out for that information. And so before we head over to the space in just a few moments, a huge thank you to all of you. I think a round of applause, as I know we're going to be led out with song. Thank you for the emphasis on resolve. Thank you for the emphasis on civic education. And thank you for the emphasis on knowing that it starts with us, you know, and that we can move that change. And so, please, over to you.
Kupigwa na kupokonywa maisha, hakutuzuia sisi wananchi kunyakua uhuru wetu na haki ya jasho letu. Tumekataa kupiga magoti mbele ya haji, bila shaka sisi hali ya utumwa tumeikataa. Tutanyakua mashamba yetu, tupiganie uhuru wetu, tuikomboe elimu yetu, utamaduni na viwanda vyetu. Sisi hatutaki kudhulumiwa tena mauaji, ili kupetuli angushe haki na uhuru zichanue, na uhuru wetu wa Kenya, uhuru wetu wa Kenya, tupigani. Let me see your face. Na katiba yetu, Kenya wa Kenya, katiba yetu wa Kenya, tutekeleze